I am privileged to interview Rebecca and Chris Van Bergen today. Rebecca founded Nest, and we'll hear about what that is in a minute, in 2006 from her apartment in St. Louis, Missouri, at the age of 24. Now Rebecca leads an organization that supports the global creative economy, assisting roughly 250,000 artisans in 124 countries. Rebecca's leadership has garnered international recognition by making craftwork a viable, profitable, and ethical option. Chris joined the Nest team in 2011 as its Chief Financial Officer and Operations Officer. He's given professional training and mentorship to more than 2,000 businesses worldwide, in addition to guiding Nest through years of exponential growth. He is also an adjunct professor at the Leonard N. Stern School of Business at New York University. Excuse me. Thank you both for sharing your time with me today. Rebecca, what prompted you to found Nest, and what exactly does Nest do?
Well, I'll answer the second part first, but Nest works with artisans and makers in the US and globally, and we bring together this kind of global community of creative entrepreneurs and help drive forward the success of their micro and small businesses through kind of investing in business development and market access and different programs that will help support their advancement and growth. I'm actually a social worker by training. So I got my degree in social work, and the year that I graduated, Muhammad Yunus won the Nobel Peace Prize for microfinance. And I remember thinking that it was such an amazing concept to give small loans to kind of previously considered unbankable women to help grow their businesses. But in our country, that is debt. It's not a business. And so to create a model where it was about giving loans, but not kind of more holistic services, felt like it might be a challenge for women. And so our mission then, and now still today, is really around kind of helping women. We work in the craft sector, so women craft entrepreneurs with their business development, and that might include small grants. We actually never do lending, but and more holistic business supports to really help them grow and thrive.
You mentioned grants. That must be how you lend money without also burdening small businesses with debt. Is that
That's
correct?
exactly right. Yeah. We really felt like for creative makers in this country and around the world, we really want to give them an infusion of capital that's patient and kind of matches the stage of growth that they're in and can kind of help maximize their impact. And that's really hard to do when it's a interest-bearing loan. And so we do try to tend for most of our programs to either be grants or recoverable loans where they have the option of repaying if they're doing well, but are forgivable.
Gosh, that's pretty amazing. I mean, it's really amazing. Chris, you started your career as a musician. What turned you toward business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get that one a lot. It is sort of a weird career trajectory. Started my career as a professional musician. It's what I went to school for, what I thought I was going to do for my career. It was going well, but I wasn't feeling satisfied. I kind of had that look in the mirror moment and was like, oh, can I do this for the rest of my career? There's something missing. Along the way, I met Rebecca. I was still a musician. I kind of started deviating into orchestral management, thinking maybe that was a good path for me. Met Rebecca, heard about what Nest was doing. So it was still early days of Nest, certainly, but and realized that what I think was missing for me was a direct intersection with impact to really be able to meet the people that I was serving and that I was improving their livelihoods and their business opportunities, and also the idea of, it's maybe somewhat cliche now, but this idea of the intersection between business and impact I found extremely interesting. And so I started helping out. We started working together, and it's been a joy growing the business together, and getting a business degree along the way to actually understand what the businesses are going through and the moves of the market and what the brands are thinking about from a strategic perspective. So yeah, it was a significant pivot, but one I'm glad that I made.
So would you say that what was missing was a sense of purpose?
You know, it's funny. I mean, as a musician, you're performing concerts um, and people, you know, applaud at the end of those concerts. But yes, it wasn't quite enough for me in some way. And it is being a musician is very fulfilling for a lot of people. And I love music. I still love music.
Yes.
But for me to be a performer, it wasn't quite what I needed. It was that sense of purpose. And it was, I think, actually using maybe a different part of my brain. Obviously, we still work in the creative economy and the creative space, but using a different part of my brain to help drive forward other people's prospects as artisans, as makers, as business owners. That's what was missing for me.
So it was a pretty serendipitous meeting when you met Rebecca then,
It
was
was
it?
indeed.
Personally and professionally.
Personally and professionally, since you're a thriving married couple now.
Right.
I was interested in the article where you talked about the ethical compliance program that you developed. Can you summarize that for someone who's not familiar with too many business terms?
Sure. Do you want to do that? You want me to do
Sure, I
that?
can kick off and then you can add to it. Most artisans and makers work in their homes. And so if you think about that, like, you know, if you're a big company and you're buying product from them, they're not in a factory that you could visit and make sure that their treatment is, you know, fine and they're being paid and their children aren't making the goods. And in a home, it's a lot harder to do that. And so as consumer demand for handcrafted goods increased, companies were really struggling with how to have transparency into that workforce. And so we partnered with the United Nations Office of Partnerships and several brands and retailers to write kind of what became the first standard used across the industry on how to treat home-based workers. So while that it's applicable for craft work because they're in their homes, it also has broader application too. And it's been real. And then, you know, we built the program so go alongside of it. So how would a company then use that standard so they can adopt it? But then, you know, we need to get it in use. And so it's been really exciting. And I think we had no idea, you know, at the time we built it, that COVID would happen and we would all become home-based workers. And so it's been a really interesting trajectory as well, just to kind of see how the nature of conversation around home-based work has evolved in the last, you know, 5 or 6 years.
I know that businesses in the last several years, many of them have turned toward the desire to be ethical as they outsource things to other countries and so forth. So what an amazing gift you've given the whole business community to set up a standard that everyone can use if they choose to. You said in your article that Chris is more risk adverse. Yeah. The financial officer, and Rebecca is more impulsive about making intuitive decisions. This sometimes creates conflict. As a marriage coach, I found it interesting that you learned to discuss business conflicts while taking a walk. So you weren't creating or having the energy of a conflict in your home with your children. I really applaud your commitment to keeping your conflicts away from your children. So how do you resolve those disagreements?
I would say we try really hard. We don't always succeed on all of the things you just said. It's easier said on paper than done in practice, but we try doing it.
Yeah, I think what has taken us a while to figure out is that we process very differently. And that I think, and I process I will say very slowly. I need time and space to kind of look at the angles. And to your point, I am risk averse. So I need to see all of the different possible outcomes. And so it moves slower. And the way that I then can articulate my position on something takes a little bit of time. Rebecca is incredibly entrepreneurial. It's amazing. It's one of the reasons why Nest is so great, that she sparks really, really fast. And so it takes us a while to know that she moves really fast. I need some time and space to figure it out. It's too slow for her. She's too fast for me. So we need to sort of figure out how to, you know, so sometimes it takes a number of different iterations of the conversation to get to a place. Or sometimes what we've done is, you know, she'll write down what she's thinking. I'll write down what I'm thinking. We'll share it via email, which is funny because we work in the same house. But going on these walks is one way that, we can also process the conversation and do it bit by bit. And for me, because I do need that time and space, I also like the motion of my body also sort of helps me continue to be able to think through stuff as we go. And so that's kind of my take on it. I'd be interested to see what you think.
I think that's right. I think with the team as well, like I've learned that I need to like have an idea and then say it a few times. And we might end up like there, but like that I need to bring people along on the journey that like I do, every once in a while our kids will laugh because out of the blue I'll say something and I'll realize I've been like having a conversation with myself and like assumed everyone else was like there with me. And then they'll be like, where did that come from? I'm like, we were just talking. Oh no, we weren't talking. I was talking. So it, but that, definitely comes through, I think, in our relationship, but also, running a growing team. Like we're 18 years old now. We're not really a startup anymore. So making sure that some of those systems are built around my brain and instincts.
Like all couples have to learn, we can't read each other's minds, right? I am deeply astounded at the depth and breadth of your vision for this service to small craft and art businesses around the globe. Do you have any idea where your capacity for a vision this big came from?
I think it's interesting. I like to share to people that the year I founded Nest, Etsy, it was the same year Etsy was founded. And I think that's interesting because if you think back 18 years, when Etsy wasn't part of our discourse, and I give them a lot of credit for this, handcraft was not like part of everyone's daily life. Like Amazon still sold books, like it was just like a lot has changed in 18 years and the consumer demand for handcraft has grown in ways I would never have anticipated that that Amazon has an entire Amazon handmade platform that, like we keep a list at the office of like funny ways handcrafted or artisan shows up on like potato chips or car interiors. And like, it's just become this thing that people crave, which is amazing. But we definitely didn't see coming. And so it's, a lot of what we've been trying to do at Nest is keep up with that consumer demand and make sure that the sector is keeping up with it. I think we're really unique in that we do kind of grassroots impact. We come alongside makers and artisans and solve real challenges, but we're also looking at the sector as a whole. How our brand, how do we need a standard for the entire industry on working with this sector? How do we change consumer understanding of handcrafted and what that means? And so we kind of like to look at the system as a whole and the micro. So we're kind of macro and micro in that way that I think is pretty unique.
It doesn't, thank you for that answer, but it doesn't explain where you got the capacity, for thinking that big.
That's a good, you definitely understood that I sidestepped the question a little bit there. I don't know, like I think entrepreneurialism runs in my family for sure. My dad was an entrepreneur and so I'm not the only person in my family that started a nonprofit specifically. And so I think that like intersection of social activism and entrepreneurship were really important values in my family. From a very young age. And so I think, I had many, many small businesses from like lemonade stands to like selling stickers to my sister's friends. But like it was like innate in me. And then that coupled with kind of like definitely a commitment to social activism and wanting to build a different world. And so I don't know, I guess just like, genetics maybe.
You must have, in your entrepreneurial family, your exposure to entrepreneurism, there must have also been an emotional support for you as a woman to become an entrepreneur, and believe that you could actually affect change. That's
a great point. I think that's definitely true. I think I like have especially a mother line of women in my family that definitely made sure that we all felt like that. And I think now looking in on creative businesses that we support who are all entrepreneurs in and of themselves, all mostly women, many women of color, I think imposter syndrome is like a very real thing. And even with that level of support, I can't even count the number of times I've walked into a meeting feeling really insecure, feeling like I'm playing dress up, like that people won't take it seriously. And so like, I think, having a committed family around you is real, but it's also real that that it's hard and it doesn't always, and especially with women, they need, validation and they need support to make sure that they succeed and feel confident in succeeding.
Well, it sounds like you're providing both the financial support and the belief in women, women and men, but particularly it's women that I think are the artists, most often the artisans. I'm going to quote something from the article. Artisan work is deeply connected to a person, their family, and their community. Skills are passed down from generation to the next generation, and families often work together. We, as a family, are committed to hands-on change, activism, and working hard for what we believe in, unquote. How do you do that as a family?
We, as a family, we talk a lot about societal issues with our children. Our children are 9 and 11. They ask a lot of questions. They're very curious. They know what we do for a living. We talk about our work. They have the great fortune of meeting many of the makers that we work with when we have convenings and gatherings, and they can kind of see that work take place. So they see the work happening. But as a family, we often talk about societal issues that are troubling to us, and talk about ways that we can become more active in trying to solve those problems. Whether that's, things like the kids doing a lemonade stand to raise funds for an issue, for example, or getting politically active in terms of the campaigns and writing postcards to potential voters, things like that. So it is something we talk about on a very regular basis. Dinner table kind of conversation, and our family is also, we're fortunate in that our families are also very, very vocal and active in terms of their thoughts around societal issues. So it is a constant conversation that's happening and taking place. And so I think that's what I feel like we're doing as parents, is exposing our children to the idea that, yes, there are issues out in the world. Can we solve all of them? Maybe not, but we can certainly try, and we can do what we can do to try and move forward in the right direction, the way that we see fit. So that's what I think. But what do you think?
I think that's all true. And then I think on the craft side of things and like the passing down of traditions, we both feel really lucky that we have really strong lineages of craft. His mom is still an active weaver. We have her textiles hanging all over our house. My grandmother was a quilter and sewer, and so was her mom before her. And so I think it's also really important that that's also a lens through which they see the world, and they feel they can see the lineage of their own family story and legacy and how that ties into the work that we do. And that kind of, nest is that merging of social activism with craft and beauty and storytelling. And so I guess that's my ad.
What a rich environment for children to be exposed. I just think you're doing an amazing job, not only as business people, but as parents.
We'll have them give us a listen so they hear that.
Yes, okay. Well, parenting isn't always perfect, is it?
For sure.
I love that you summarized that nest is your passion and family is your heart. How do you keep such a vibrant business from consuming all your time and energy?
I think one thing that I read this study that really, really resonated to me and was true in my own life, where my dad was an entrepreneur and he worked a lot. He worked all the time, but he loved it. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep, and he'd still be awake. And, this was before computers. So he had a whiteboard in his office and, a little dictaphone and I remember being so inspired by that. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted that. I wanted that level of passion about whatever it was that I did. And I think other kids had dads who worked a lot, and that wasn't their experience. And so I think and now there's actually studies to show that it's actually not the time a parent spends working, it's whether they're happy doing it and whether they're coming home angry or upset or frustrated. And so the parent's relationship to work is actually more important to a child's understanding and happiness of work than the actual hours. And so I think that, maybe it was just validating because I spend a lot of time working, but it was really nice because I think our kids do see us loving the work that we're doing. They get to be a part of it. We bring them along. They've sat under many boardroom tables, and gotten to experience the work that we do. And so I hope that instead of seeing us as being sometimes absent, that they see us as inspired and passionate about the things that we do, and that motivates them to want to find that same purpose in their lives.
And including them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am a relationship coach. I teach communication skills. So you can imagine how thrilled I was to learn that you habitually use active listening. Would one of you describe that skill to our listeners?
I'll take a stab at it. So active listening is really the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody and pay full attention to what they're saying, to then also be repeating back, not parroting back, but repeating back what they think they're hearing, to make sure that you have the most solid understanding of the other person's position. And then from there, adding in your own either color or context, but it's really about fully listening to the other person, engaging with what they're trying to communicate to you, and being really fully involved in that process, as opposed to listening and already trying to make your point before you clarify the point that was made. So that's the trick.
Really great explanation. So what is the benefit of practicing active listening, not only in your marriage and your family, but also in your business?
I think there's, between us, but also at the organization as a whole, we hire, and this is true in nonprofits and social enterprises, we hire passionate people who believe very, very deeply in the work that we do. And with that comes strong opinions about what that means and what that looks like. And so I think it's really important that as a team, we're hearing that out. And I think, there's often I would say that this shows up a lot between fundraising teams and program implementation teams, where, the fundraising team might have a very specific idea about landing a grant or what a partner wants to hear, a donor wants to hear. And then the program implementation team has a really strong vision of how the program should run and the impact it will have. And sometimes those marry perfectly, but often there's there can be tension between those two. And so really making sure that we're mirroring an example, setting an example for how we can communicate where we're, seeing the value and investing in the value of multiple opinions and diverse opinions within the organization.
So the persons you're listening to are feeling heard and understood. And I find that when someone feels heard and understood, they're far more open to being cooperative to adjustments in the plan, whatever the plan may need to be. You stated that you'd love to inspire a movement where artists are leading global change focused on creativity, connection, and humanity. I add my desire to yours for this source of powerful world change. The listeners of this video interview can learn more by reading Rebecca and Chris Van Bergen's article on Authority Magazine. You can follow them at buildanest.org. Such a great title for what you do. And thank you both for all the good you are contributing to our world.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the time you've spent with me this morning. I'm inspired by the work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Wishing you a really good day if I figure out how to stop this recording. Bye-bye.
Bye.